Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime episode. Today we will be covering the notorious murderer Ted Bundy. This will be episode 1 of 2 because there is so much to get into in terms of Bundy and the crimes that he committed. So starting off with a little intro about Ted Bundy. He was a serial killer, rapist and necrophiliac who admitted to killing 30 women in the 1970s, though experts believe his actual victim count might be over 100. Though I love watching true crime, I honestly didn't know much about Bundy before making this video, except the fact that he represented himself in court, which is just so weird. Childhood. Born on the 24th of November 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, Bundy was brought into his life as a secret, as his illegitimate birth humiliated his mother's religious parents, which is a great start to life, isn't it? Eleanor Louise Cowell, who went by Louise, was 22 years old when she delivered Ted at a home for unwed mothers, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but I guess if we're talking in the 40s then yeah, sure. But Cowell did later bring her son to her parents in Philadelphia, so it sounds like they came around after all. Ted's birth certificate lists his father as unknown, so his biological father's identity might never be confirmed. However, there are some theories about who he might be. One possibility is Lloyd Marshall, an Air Force veteran. Other sources say Ted's father is someone called Jack Worthington, and some rumours have even said that his grandfather was also his father. To hide the fact that he was an illegitimate child, Bundy was raised as the adopted son of his grandparents and was told that his mother was his sister, which is just so f***ed up. Can you imagine actually finding out that that's not the truth? Also, illegitimacy, it's not a real thing. It's not. Marriage is just something you do if you want to do it. Cowell moved with her young son to Tacoma, Washington, and in 1951 she married Johnny Bundy. Ted took his name, but he reportedly didn't get on with his stepfather as he resented him for being too uneducated and working class. So we're already seeing that narcissistic behaviour at a very young age. Bundy's upbringing appeared to be typical of a working class family, though from a young age he showed a peculiar fascination with the macabre, as when he was just 3 years old, he developed an obsession with knives, as you do as a 3-year-old. Also, how did that even come about? He must have just had access to knives all the time, which is it's not great. Bundy was a quiet yet intelligent child who excelled in school but struggled with his classmates. Bundy dismembered mice in the woods and attempted to drown people while swimming or boating. He showed no sense of remorse, guilt, embarrassment, or shame. He began to show an even darker side to himself as he grew into his teens, enjoying looking through people's windows and grabbing items that he desired. Education. Bundy received his psychology degree from the University of Washington in 1972. He was also accepted to and attended Utah's law school, though he never graduated. While attending the University of Washington, Bundy developed feelings for a girl named Diane Edwards, a wealthy and attractive young woman from California. She possessed wealth, status, and power, all of which he desired. Bundy later described Edwards as the only woman I ever really loved. Their separation devastated him so much that Bundy's college girlfriend and many of his subsequent victims looked like Edwards, attractive students with long dark hair. By the mid-1970s, Bundy had remolded himself, becoming more publicly self-assured and involved in social and political issues. After working on his campaign, he even received a letter of recommendation from Washington's Republican governor. So he sounds like a big deal. The murders. So it's still unknown when Bundy actually began killing in the first place. He had told different people different dates, the earliest of which was 1969. However, some believe that he could have started killing in his teen years, which I completely agree with. The earliest documented homicides were committed in 1974 when he was 27 years old. But he had admitted later on that by this time he'd already mastered the necessary skills to leave minimal incriminating forensic evidence at crime scenes. So let's get into these murders. Shortly after midnight on the 4th of January 1974, around the time he ended his relationship with Edwards, Bundy entered the basement apartment of 18-year-old Karen Sparks, a dancer and student at the University of Washington. After bludgeoning Sparks with a metal rod from her bed frame, he sexually assaulted her with the same rod, causing extensive internal injuries and rupturing her bladder. Sparks remained unconscious in the hospital for 10 days, and although she survived, she was left with permanent permanent brain damage with significant loss to her vision and hearing. And supposedly that was the first murder, well, at least the first documented one. In the early morning of the 1st of February, Bundy broke into the basement room of 21-year-old Linda Ann Healy, another University of Washington student who broadcasted the morning radio weather reports for skiers. He beat her unconscious, dressed her in blue jeans, a white blouse and boots, and carried her away. He later stated that he drove Healy to a secluded area where he raped and murdered her before dumping her body. During the first half of 1974, female college students disappeared at the rate of about one per month. On the 12th of March, 19-year-old Donna Gail Manson left her dorm to attend a jazz concert on campus but never arrived. Bundy claimed that he burned Manson's skull in his girlfriend's fireplace. On the 17th of April, 18-year-old Susan Elaine Rancourt disappeared while on her way to her dorm after an evening advisors meeting at Central Washington State College. It's just sad how it happens just so randomly, like someone's just coming back from an appointment on campus and then they're just killed. Two female Central Washington students later came forward to report encounters, one on the night of Rancourt's disappearance, the other 3 nights earlier, with a man wearing a sling who was asking for help carrying a load of books to his brown or tan Volkswagen Beetle. On the 6th of May, 22-year-old Roberta Kathleen Parks left her dorm at Oregon State University to have coffee with friends, but she never arrived. Bundy claimed that he spotted Parks in the cafeteria and persuaded her to go with him to a bar. After they got into his car, he tied and gagged Parks and drove her back to Washington to be killed, raping her twice on the way. On the 1st of June, 22-year-old Brenda Carol Ball disappeared after leaving the Flame Tavern in Burien. She was last seen in the parking lot talking to a brown-haired man with his arm in a sling. And this reminds me of that film that Anna Kendrick directed, Woman of the Hour, where she's walking through the parking lot and he's just following her. It's just amazing film. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. Bundy later stated that he brought Ball back to his residence where they had a consensual sexual encounter before he strangled her while she was sleeping, although this failed to explain the damage done to her skull. Investigators from Seattle and King County grew increasingly concerned. There was no significant physical evidence and the missing women had little in common apart from their similar appearance. Young, attractive white college students with long hair parted in the middle. In the early hours of the 11th of June, 18-year-old student Georgian Hawkins vanished while walking down a brightly lit alley between her boyfriend's dorm and her sorority house. Bundy later claimed that he lured Hawkins to his car and knocked her unconscious with a crowbar. After handcuffing her, he drove her to a different location where he strangled her and spent the entire night with her body. The next afternoon, he returned to the same alley and in the very midst of a major crime scene investigation, he located and gathered Hawkins' earrings and one of her shoes and departed unobserved. Bundy said he revisited Hawkins' corpse on 3 occasions. After Hawkins' disappearance was publicised, witness came forward to report seeing a man on crutches with a leg cast and carrying a briefcase in an alley behind a nearby dorm on the night of her disappearance. One woman recalled that the man asked her to help him carry the case to his car, a light brown Volkswagen Beetle. During this time, Bundy was working in Olympia as the assistant director of the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Committee, where he wrote a pamphlet for women on rape prevention. But there is more. Later, he worked at the Department of Emergency Services, a state government agency involved in the search for the missing women. You know how they say about murderers who like to return to the spot where they've killed their victims? This just takes it to a whole new level. Like, he's involved with the investigation. I can imagine that he would get so much thrill out of that, being so close to these investigators who are trying to figure out who has done this, and he's right there. It's him. At this job, he met and began dating a woman called Carol Ann Boone. And keep her name in mind because she does become very important later on. The last of the Washington and Oregon murders were on the 14th of July, where Bundy abducted 2 women in broad daylight from a crowded beach at Lake Sammamish State Park. 4 female witnesses described an attractive young man wearing a white tennis outfit with his left arm in a sling, speaking with a light accent, perhaps Canadian or British. He introduced himself as Ted and asked them to help him unload a sailboat from his Volkswagen Beetle. 3 of the women said no, we love to hear that, but one did follow him to the car but then after seeing that there was no sailboat in there, she fled. 3 additional witnesses saw Ted approach 23-year-old Janice Ann Ott, a probation caseworker at the King County Juvenile Court, and watched her leave the beach with him. 4 hours later, 19-year-old Denise Marie Nasland, who was studying to become a computer programmer, went to the restroom and never returned. Bundy said that Ott was still alive when he brought Nasland to the same location, and that he forced one to watch as he assaulted and murdered the other, but he denied this the day before his execution. So at this time, King County Police finally had a detailed description of the suspect and his car, so they posted flyers throughout Seattle. A composite sketch was also printed in newspapers and broadcast on local television. I don't want to butcher this name, but Elizabeth Clofer, Bundy's girlfriend, a fellow employee of Bundy, and a psychology professor at the University of Washington all recognised the profile, sketch and car and reported Bundy as a possible suspect. But detectives thought it unlikely that a clean-cut law student with no adult criminal record could be the perpetrator.
No! God, please, no! No!
I mean, they could have had him. They could have questioned him and they could have got him at this point. On the 6th of September, 2 game hunters found the skeletal remains of Ott and Nasland near a service road in Ithaca, 2 miles east of Lake Sammamish State Park. An extra femur bone and several vertebrae at the site were later identified by Bundy as those of Hawkins. 6 months later, a group of forestry students discovered the skulls and jawbones of Healy, Rancourt, Parks and Ball on Taylor Mountain, where Bundy frequently hiked, but Manson's remains were never recovered. Can you imagine being one of those students though, just stumbling across skulls and... In August of 1974, Bundy received a second acceptance from the University of Utah Law School and moved to Salt Lake City. This was his second time studying the first-year law curriculum, and Bundy was devastated to find out that the other students had some intellectual capacity that he did not. He found the classes impossible to understand. It was a great disappointment to me, he said. I mean, that's not going to help things at all, is it? On the 2nd of September, Bundy raped and strangled a still unidentified hitchhiker in Idaho, then returned the next day to photograph and dismember the corpse before throwing the remains into a nearby river. Exactly a month later, on the 2nd of October, he abducted 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox. Bundy stated that Wilcox was walking on a poorly lit main roadway when he parked his car and forced her into an orchard. He then restrained and put her into his vehicle and drove back to his apartment, where he kept her there for 24 hours. Her remains were never found, despite Bundy admitting that they were near Capitol Reef National Park. I'm not sure whether that was a lie on his part or whether it was just an area that was too vast to search. On the 18th of October, 17-year-old Melissa Ann Smith, the daughter of the police chief of Midvale, disappeared after leaving a pizza parlour at around 9:30 p.m. Her nude body was found in a nearby mountainous area 9 days later, though she may have been alive for up to a week following her disappearance. I don't know whether this was deliberate on his part or if it was just a coincidence that her father was the police chief of Midvale, but this is a finger up at the cops if I ever did see one. On Halloween night, 17-year-old Laura Ann Aim disappeared after leaving a Halloween party by herself just after midnight, last being seen trying to hitchhike. Her nude body was found by hikers on Thanksgiving Day. It's estimated that Aim had died on the 20th of November, 20 days after her disappearance. So both of these victims I've just talked about, Smith and Aim, had been beaten, raped, sodomized and strangled with nylon stockings. Years later, Bundy said that he washed the hair of Smith and Aim's corpses and applied makeup to them. On the afternoon of the 8th of November, Bundy approached 18-year-old Carol DeRonch at a mall less than a mile from the Midvale restaurant where Smith was last seen. He identified himself as Officer Roseland of the Murray Police Department and told her that someone had attempted to break into her car. He asked her to accompany him to the station to file a complaint. When DeRonch pointed out to Bundy that he was driving on a road that did not lead to the police station, he immediately pulled onto the shoulder and attempted to handcuff her. During their struggle, he accidentally fastened both handcuffs to the same wrist and Durant was able to open the car door and escape. Later that evening, 17-year-old Deborah Jean Kent, a student at Viewmont High School, disappeared after leaving a theatre production at the school. The school's drama teacher and a student told police that a stranger had asked each of them to come out to the parking lot to identify a car. Another student later saw the same man pacing in the rear of the auditorium. Outside of the auditorium, investigators found a key that unlocked the handcuffs removed from Durant's wrist. Bundy eventually admitted to abducting Kent and keeping her at his apartment for a day, stating that she was alive during half of it. I do find that reading about murderers, they often do this thing where if they can't kill one person, the very same day they will have to kill someone else or abduct someone else to make up for the fact that they couldn't get that first one. It's really, really sick, but you see it happen quite a lot. In November, Elizabeth Clover, so Bundy's girlfriend, called King County Police a second time after reading that women were disappearing in Salt Lake City. She was interviewed in detail and the investigators grew more suspicious of Bundy as a result. But the Lake Sammamish witness, considered most reliable by detectives, failed to identify him from a photo lineup. In December, Clover called the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office and repeated her suspicions. Honestly, how long does it take for a message to go through? Bundy's name was added to their list of suspects, but at that time, no forensic evidence linked him to the Utah murders. In January 1975, Bundy returned to Seattle after his final exams, and he spent a week with Clover. She obviously didn't tell him about her multiple phone calls to the police. She also made plans to visit him in Salt Lake City in August. I mean, I guess she was trying to act normal by not breaking it off with him, but I cannot imagine what she was going through at this time. In this year of 1975, Bundy shifted his crimes to Colorado. This started on the 12th of January when 23-year-old nurse Karen Eileen Campbell disappeared while walking down a well-lit hallway between the elevator and her room at the Wildwood Inn. Her nude body was found a month later next to a dirt road just outside the resort. She had been killed by blows to the head from a blunt instrument. Her left earlobe had been slit and there were deep cuts on her body. On the 15th of March, 26-year-old Vail ski instructor Julie Lyle Cunningham disappeared while walking from her apartment to a dinner with a friend. Bundy admitted that he approached her on crutches and asked her to help carry his ski boots to his car, where he then clubbed and handcuffed her before sexually assaulting her at a different location. A few weeks later, he drove 6 hours from Salt Lake City to visit her remains. On the 6th of April, 25-year-old Denise Lynn Oliverson disappeared near the Utah-Colorado border while riding her bicycle to her parents' house. Her bike and sandals were found under a viaduct near a railroad bridge. Bundy said he abducted Oliverson, killed her in his car and dumped her body in the Colorado River. This was supported by gas receipts which showed that he was there on that day. On the 6th of May, Bundy parked outside Alameda Junior High School after seeing 12-year-old Lynette Dawn Culver walking by herself. He lured her into his car before driving her to his hotel room. He then raped Culver, drowned her in the bathtub, and disposed of her body in the Snake River. In mid-May, 3 of Bundy's DES colleagues, including Ann Boone, another girlfriend we heard about earlier, visited him in Salt Lake City and stayed at his apartment for a week. He then spent a week in Seattle with Clover in early June, and they discussed getting married the following Christmas. I just don't understand it. I just don't get it. Again, Clover obviously didn't mention her discussions with the detectives. Bundy, of course, didn't tell Boone about this relationship or about another romance going on with a Utah law student at the same time. On the 28th of June, 15-year-old Susan Curtis vanished from Brigham Young University. Her murder was Bundy's last confession before he entered the execution chamber. The bodies of Wilcox, Kent, Cunningham, Oliverson, Culver, and Curtis were never recovered. In August 1975, Bundy was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, although unsurprisingly, he didn't participate in services and ignored most church restrictions. He would later be excommunicated following his 1976 kidnapping conviction. When asked his religious preference after his arrest, Bundy answered Methodist, the religion of his childhood. In Washington state, investigators were still struggling to analyse the evidence, given that it was just a massive pile of information. They came up with the idea of compiling this information into a database. They used what they could, which was the King County payroll computer, which was not a good piece of technology. After inputting classmates and acquaintances of each victim, Volkswagen owners named Ted, known sex offenders, etc., they queried the computer for coincidences. Out of thousands, 26 names turned up on 4 lists and 1 was Bundy. Detectives also manually compiled a list of their 100 best suspects, and Bundy was on that list as well. And next week we will be getting into his first arrest before he managed to escape and then commit more murders. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please of course like and subscribe if you don't want to miss the second part of this true crime case. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.